The evening air outside the glass-walled penthouse felt strangely quiet as I stepped out onto the balcony, letting the cool breeze brush against my heated cheeks. My mind was still replaying everything, every little moment with Ethan, every little argument, and especially the one thing I still couldn't forget, the latest iPhone 17 Pro Max Sapphire Edition. The phone I had asked him for. The one he hadn't replied about. The one that somehow turned our whole day upside down. I leaned against the metal railing, staring down at the glittering city lights far below, trying to calm the storm inside me. But the frustration kept bubbling up, not because of the phone, but because I couldn't understand what was going on in his head. Ethan was never the type to ignore me. Never the type to distance himself suddenly. And yet tonight, his silence felt louder than the traffic 40 floors below. I wrapped my arms around myself as memories flickered quickly in my mind. Just yesterday morning he was laughing, hugging me from behind while I made coffee, talking about new client deals and flights he needed to take. Every moment with him felt warm, steady, secure, like he was building a future with me. And now? Now it felt like something had shifted. Something he wasn't telling me. The sliding door behind me opened quietly. Anna. His voice was soft, too soft, almost hesitant. I didn't turn around immediately. I wasn't ready to face the expression I knew he would be wearing. That careful, gentle look he always used when he thought I was upset. He stepped beside me, close enough for me to feel his warmth but far enough to keep a boundary. "Why'd you walk away like that?" he asked, sounding genuinely confused. I let out a breath. "Because you just went silent on me. You could have at least told me what you were thinking." He ran a hand through his hair, the city lights reflecting on his sharp jawline and tired eyes. "I wasn't ignoring you, Anna. I just didn't know how to respond." His voice cracked slightly, not with anger, but with something I couldn't yet identify. I finally turned to him. "It was just a phone, Ethan. Why did you act like I asked for something impossible?" He shook his head instantly. "It's not the phone. It's not that at all." "Then what is it?" For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at me like he was trying to read something deeper inside me, like my question carried a weight neither of us had acknowledged before. "I'm dealing with something," he finally said. "Something I'm not ready to talk about yet." My heart dropped a little. That wasn't the answer I expected. Before I could react, he stepped closer, not touching me, just close enough that the warmth of his breath brushed my forehead. "But you asking for the iPhone today," he whispered, it hit me at the wrong moment. It made me realize I might disappoint you in a way I never wanted to. His words sent a strange chill through me. Disappoint me? What could possibly be happening that would make him think that? I searched his eyes, trying to understand. But he blinked, looking away toward the city instead, like he was hiding something far bigger than a simple argument. "Ethan, talk to me," I said softly. He shook his head again. "Just give me one night. One night to fix what I need to fix." My breath caught. What did he mean by fix? Before I could ask anything else, his phone buzzed, a sharp, quick vibration. He checked it, and his entire expression changed. Tensed. Alert. Almost afraid. And then he whispered something I'd never heard from him before. "I have to go. Now." He squeezed my hand for a split second and rushed back inside, leaving me stunned on the balcony, my heartbeat echoing in the silence. Something was very, very wrong. And I was about to find out exactly what. The moment Ethan rushed out of the penthouse, the entire place fell into a silence that didn't feel natural. It felt heavy, almost warning me that something larger than our argument was unfolding behind the scenes. I stood frozen for a few seconds, my hand still slightly trembling where he had held it, his grip tight, like he wanted to say more but couldn't. The elevator dinged faintly somewhere below, reminding me he was already gone. I stepped back inside slowly, my eyes drifting to the place where he had just been standing. His favorite jacket was still hanging on the chair. His smartwatch still sat on the marble countertop. His half-finished espresso remained on the table. Everything felt so normal, except he wasn't here. I tried to shake off the uneasiness, telling myself he would be back soon, that maybe it was just a sudden business call or some urgent work crisis. But something about the way his expression changed when he saw that message, it didn't feel like work. It felt personal. Urgent. Dangerous. I walked toward his desk, glancing at the stack of unopened envelopes scattered across it, something Ethan never let pile up. He was meticulous, organized, always in control. But lately, something had clearly shaken that controlled part of him. I sat on the couch, hugging a cushion absent-mindedly, my eyes glued to the door as if expecting him to walk back in any second. I waited 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. Nothing. The city outside looked unreal through the giant windows, busy, bright, alive, while inside everything felt strangely cold. I picked up his smartwatch, the screen glowing as it recognized my face. A tiny part of me felt guilty for checking, but another part reminded me I was scared, worried, and wildly confused. No notifications. No missed calls. No fitness alerts. Nothing unusual. Except, one recent calendar entry caught my eye. Tonight, meet 11 p.m., Warehouse District, restricted. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a business meeting. Ethan never scheduled meetings without telling me. And certainly not at a warehouse district at 11 at night. That wasn't his world. That wasn't his routine. I put the watch down, anxiety slowly tightening in my chest. I glanced at the apartment door again. 11:47 p.m. He had been gone almost an hour. I tried calling him. No response. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. His voice sounded warm and normal in the recording, nothing like the tension I saw in his eyes before he left. I listened to the voicemail twice, whispering into the quiet room, "Ethan, where are you?" I stood and paced, the click of my heels echoing loudly. After a few minutes, the penthouse felt unbearable, suffocating almost, so I grabbed my bag and headed to the elevator. The city air hit me harder this time as I stepped outside, almost grounding me. I wasn't planning to follow him, but something in my chest wouldn't let me sit still. I opened the ride app on my phone, typed Warehouse District, and pressed confirm. The city lights blurred past as the car moved through the late-night streets. My stomach twisted with every passing minute, every turn the driver made. And just as we entered the quiet, shadowy industrial zone, my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. My heart jumped. I opened it immediately. "If you want Ethan safe, don't call anyone. Don't tell anyone. And don't come here." My blood ran cold. I looked out the window at the dark warehouses ahead. I had already arrived. The message wasn't a warning. It was a trap. The moment I read that text, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was a chilling realization that whoever sent that message already knew exactly where I was and exactly what I was about to do. I stared out the car window at the long, empty stretch of warehouses under flickering streetlights, and for the first time that night it hit me that this wasn't just about a MacBook or an argument or a misunderstanding. Something far bigger was happening to Ethan, and I had stepped straight into the middle of it. The driver glanced at me through the mirror as if sensing something was wrong. I forced a small nod, pretending everything was fine, though my heart was pounding so loudly I swore he could hear it. When the car slowed near the pinned location, I told him to stop before we reached the end of the road. He hesitated, but I paid quickly and stepped out, keeping my eyes on every shadow around me. The air felt different here, heavy, dusty, cold in a way that didn't belong to the city. I clutched my phone and looked around. The message said, "Don't come." But Ethan's absence screamed louder than any warning. I started walking toward the third warehouse, the one with the half-broken red door hanging slightly off its hinge. A faint humming sound echoed from somewhere inside, like machinery or maybe a generator. Every step felt heavier because a single thought kept circling my mind. Why would someone threaten me about Ethan? What was he hiding? And why did he leave so suddenly, like he couldn't even explain? Just when I reached the side of the building, my phone buzzed again. I froze. Slowly, I raised the screen. Another message from the same unknown number. Turn around slowly. My breath got stuck in my throat. I didn't move, not even an inch. The message wasn't typed like the first one. It felt rushed, almost like someone was shaking when they sent it. A second message appeared right after. Don't let them see you. Them. Not him. Them. I backed into the shadow of the warehouse wall and peeked around the corner. A black SUV was parked near the entrance. Two men stood outside dressed in dark jackets and earpieces, like security, but not the regular kind. Their movements were too sharp, too disciplined, too alert. They weren't waiting for Ethan. They were waiting for someone else. Maybe me. My chest tightened again as I tried to understand what Ethan had gotten himself into. Ethan, the man who surprised me with weekend trips and laughed in grocery store aisles and always told me I didn't need luxury to feel valued. That same Ethan was involved in something secret enough to draw attention from people like this. A sharp metallic sound echoed inside the warehouse, like a gate being dragged or something heavy being locked. One of the men stepped inside, talking softly into an earpiece. The other stayed near the SUV, scanning the area with slow, calculated movements. My hands were shaking now, but I couldn't leave. Not without knowing if Ethan was in there. I crouched behind a stack of crates, and in that moment I felt my entire world balancing between fear and determination. Whatever was happening wasn't an accident. Someone had been watching him. Maybe watching us. Another message buzzed. If you care about him, stay hidden. This time my breathing stopped completely, because beneath those words there was a second part written in tiny spaced letters, like the sender didn't want someone else noticing. He's in danger. And so are you. My heart dropped. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps approaching fast. The moment I heard my own name whispered in the dark, I knew I wasn't alone. I froze where I crouched, because that whisper wasn't loud, but it was close enough to sink straight into my spine. I turned slowly, expecting to see one of the men from the SUV or someone working with them, but what I saw instead made my breath lock tight in my chest. A small shadow moved behind the crates, and before I could scream, a hand pulled me deeper into the corner. I almost pushed back until a familiar voice whispered again, but this time it trembled like it had been holding fear for too long. It was Ethan. He looked exhausted and shaken, and nothing like the calm, confident man I had last seen 2 days ago. His clothes were dusty, his hair messy, and his eyes wide with something between panic and guilt. He pressed a finger to his lips, begging me not to speak. I nodded, even though my heart was beating hard enough to break. He leaned close and whispered so softly I barely heard him. He told me I shouldn't have come here, and that he tried to stop me, but he didn't have his phone. He said the messages weren't from him, but from someone trying to help him escape. I searched his eyes, trying to understand, because nothing made sense. Why was he hiding here? Why were men outside waiting like guards? And what danger was he talking about? He grabbed my hand tightly and pulled me further behind a row of metal shelves where we were covered by shadows. He kept checking around, like every sound meant danger. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but I stayed quiet, letting him speak at his pace. He told me that the job offer he accepted weeks ago wasn't what he thought. They promised him a tech development role, but once he signed the contract, they started forcing him to work on something confidential, something that could track personal devices, including laptops, phones, and even upcoming Mac systems. He said he tried to quit, but they threatened him with legal action, then financial pressure, then something worse. I felt his hands shake while he talked, and it made every word heavier. He said he finally decided to run 2 nights ago, but someone inside warned him that the organization he worked for didn't let people walk away. That's why he disappeared. That's why he didn't want me involved. But when he heard they had tracked his location through a security badge, he panicked, because he thought they might use me to lure him back. My chest hurt hearing all this because I came here thinking he was hiding something from me, but the truth was he was trying to protect me. I squeezed his hand, but before either of us could speak we heard footsteps inside the warehouse. 2 men were talking about checking the back rooms. Ethan's face went pale. He whispered that they were doing a sweep and if they found us there wouldn't be time to escape. He pointed to a broken ventilation panel behind the shelves and told me we had only seconds to crawl through it before they reached us. I took a deep breath and followed him even though fear was wrapping around me like cold air. As we crawled into the narrow space I heard the warehouse door slam and one of the men shouted that they saw movement. I didn't look back. I just followed Ethan into the darkness ahead. I thought the darkness behind us was the worst part until I heard someone crawling after us. The moment that sound reached my ears everything inside me tightened. Ethan turned his head just enough to meet my eyes and I didn't need words to understand what he was thinking. Someone had followed us into the vent and the narrow metal tunnel meant we had nowhere to run except forward. Ethan whispered for me to keep moving no matter what. I nodded and kept crawling trying to keep my breathing quiet even though my heartbeat felt like it was echoing through the metal walls. The vent was tight and dusty and every movement sent small vibrations through the structure making me worry whoever was behind us could track exactly where we were headed. Ethan kept glancing over his shoulder checking the distance but the noise behind us grew louder like whoever was coming wasn't hiding anymore. They were coming fast. Ethan whispered that he knew the vent system and that if we reached the left junction we could drop down into a maintenance room that connected to another exit. I pushed myself to move faster even though my knees ached against the metal. When we reached the junction Ethan kicked the old grate until it loosened then dropped down first. He caught me as I slid after him and helped me land quietly. The room was small with a flickering bulb and shelves filled with tools and spare parts. We barely had time to breathe when we heard the vent grate scrape above us. Someone was right there. Ethan grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a narrow hallway at the back. The door at the end of the hallway was locked from the outside but Ethan found a metal rod on a shelf and jammed it between the latch forcing it open. As soon as we stepped outside a burst of cold air hit my face and for a moment I felt relief until Ethan pulled me behind a parked truck and pointed ahead. The 2 men from earlier were scanning the area with flashlights talking about blocking the main exits so no one could escape. Ethan whispered that these men weren't regular employees but enforcers hired to keep everything under control. He said the project he was working on wasn't just tech, it was something that could track people in real time using any connected device. When he refused to continue they threatened to frame him for stealing confidential data. They wanted to trap him and now they wanted to capture both of us. I felt anger rise in my chest because all of this started from something as simple as me asking him about the MacBook Ultra. I had no idea what he was carrying on his shoulders. I grabbed his hand tighter and told him we would get out together. He looked at me with tired eyes but there was hope inside them too. We moved along the shadows carefully staying hidden from the men with flashlights. Ethan said there was one more exit through a loading ramp but getting there meant crossing open space with almost no cover. Before I could answer we heard a loud metallic clang behind us. They found the vent. They knew we were out. Ethan whispered that we had to run now or we'd lose our chance. I took a breath and nodded because there was no turning back. I didn't realize the real danger wasn't in front of us, it was standing right behind me. The moment Ethan whispered that we had to run my legs moved on their own. We slipped up from behind the truck and sprinted across the dimly lit loading zone keeping our heads low. Cold air brushed against my face and every breath felt sharp. Ethan kept glancing over his shoulder checking how close the men were. I focused on matching his pace trying to ignore the pounding in my chest. Halfway across the open ground I felt a strange chill creep down my spine. Not from the cold but from something else. The hairs on my neck lifted like someone was watching me from a place I couldn't see. I didn't dare slow down but the feeling only grew stronger. Ethan reached the edge of the loading ramp and pulled me behind a stack of crates while we caught our breath. He peeked around the corner to see if the men had spotted us. I leaned against the crate trying to steady myself but the uneasy heaviness in my back wouldn't go away. Ethan whispered that the exit door was just 30 feet ahead but there were cameras facing it. He said if they saw us on the feed they'd lock the entire facility. I asked if there was a blind spot. He nodded and pointed to a narrow path along the wall that we could crawl under as long as we stayed flat. It would be tight but possible. I agreed even though the idea made my stomach twist. We dropped onto the cold concrete and started sliding forward. The ground smelled of dust and oil, but staying hidden mattered more than comfort. Ethan moved first and I followed close behind him, keeping my body pressed low. When the flashlight beam swung across the yard, I held my breath, praying they wouldn't look down. Just when we cleared the cameras and reached the shadow of the exit door, I felt a warm breath behind my ear. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't my imagination. Someone was standing right behind me. I froze. My heart thudded so hard it hurt. Ethan noticed my stillness and turned slowly, his eyes widening at something over my shoulder. Before I could react, a hand grabbed the back of my jacket and yanked me upward. I stumbled and tried to break free, but the grip was strong. Ethan lunged forward, trying to pull me away, but the man holding me twisted me aside and stepped between us. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't threatening, he was calm in a way that made everything even scarier. He said he had been watching us ever since Ethan entered the lab, and that the reason he followed us wasn't to stop us from escaping, but to stop Ethan from revealing what he knew. Ethan demanded to know what they wanted with me. The man said I was leverage. A bargaining chip. A way to force Ethan back into the project. My throat tightened because for the first time I realized just how deep this went. This wasn't about a laptop. This wasn't about money. This was about control. The man pushed me toward the wall, telling Ethan to surrender or I wouldn't be walking out. But Ethan didn't step back. He stepped forward. Eyes steady. Shoulders squared. And he said one sentence that made the man's grip loosen just enough. I didn't come here empty-handed. I had no idea Ethan was hiding something powerful enough to change everything. The man's grip on my arm weakened for just a second, but that second felt like a crack of light in a locked room. Ethan's voice was steady, almost too steady, like he had already made peace with whatever he was about to face. The man narrowed his eyes at him, waiting for an explanation. I watched Ethan's hand slide into his jacket pocket, and for a moment I feared he was reaching for something reckless. But when he pulled it out, it wasn't a weapon. It was a small metallic capsule no larger than a flash drive, glowing faintly at the edges. The man's expression changed instantly. His confidence flickered and his fingers tensed around my jacket again, but not as firmly as before. He asked Ethan where he got it. Ethan didn't answer. He stepped closer and told him that everything the project tried to bury, everything the team erased, and everything they threatened him over was inside this capsule. Every test, every failed prototype, every ethical violation, every lie. I felt the man's grip slip a little more. His breathing grew uneven. It became painfully clear that whatever Ethan was holding wasn't just evidence. It was leverage 10 times stronger than anything they could have used against us. The man tried to regain control, telling Ethan that the capsule didn't matter because no one would believe him. Ethan smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was tired. Hurt. Done with being afraid. He said he already uploaded the contents to a cloud server and scheduled it to auto-release if anything happened to either of us. That shook the man completely. His fingers finally let go of me and I stumbled back into Ethan's side. Ethan pulled me behind him without breaking eye contact with the man. The silence between them felt sharp, like if either of them moved too fast the moment would snap. The man asked Ethan what he wanted. Ethan kept his voice calm. He said he wanted us to walk out of the building unharmed, and he wanted the project to leave us alone permanently. No calls. No threats. No tracking. No interference. The man hesitated. I could see the conflict in his face. If he stopped us, he risked everything in that capsule being exposed. If he let us go, he risked his job and possibly more. He looked toward the upper walkway where the other guards were still searching, and then back at us. Ethan didn't move. He didn't blink. He just waited. Finally, the man stepped aside. Not fully, but enough to show he wasn't going to grab me again. He warned Ethan that walking away wouldn't fix what he had started. Ethan nodded and said walking away wasn't the plan. Surviving was. He took my hand and we headed for the exit door. Every step felt heavy, like the air was thick with things unsaid. When we pushed through the emergency door, the cold night hit us instantly. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe again. But as we stepped into the parking lot, Ethan whispered that we had one more problem to deal with. And it wasn't behind us. It was waiting right in front of the car. I thought the danger was behind us, until I saw who was standing in front of the car. I froze the moment my eyes landed on the figure blocking our way. For a heartbeat, my mind couldn't process who it was, because the last person I expected to see in that place at that hour was Ethan's older brother Lucas. He stood perfectly still, his hands shoved inside his coat pockets, his face unreadable in the dim parking lot lights. Lucas was never the loud type, never the dramatic type, and never the type to show up anywhere without a reason. Which meant his presence right now wasn't an accident. It was a warning. Ethan tightened his grip on my hand just slightly, but enough to tell me he wasn't surprised. That worried me more than seeing Lucas there. Lucas didn't move. He didn't greet us. He didn't smile. He just stared at Ethan in a way that made the air feel colder than the night around us. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded calm yet heavy, like he already knew the answer to the question he was about to ask. He wanted to know if Ethan understood what he had done. Ethan stepped forward, pulling me along with him. He told Lucas that he wasn't going to let the project trap him anymore, and he wasn't going to let them touch me again. Lucas didn't raise his voice, but his tone sharpened as he told Ethan that exposing the capsule, even as a threat, could destroy not just the project but the entire team and every person attached to it, including their own family. Ethan didn't look away. He told Lucas that the project destroyed itself the moment it started treating people like disposable data. Lucas let out a slow breath, and for a moment I saw the crack of conflict run across his expression. He wasn't there to intimidate Ethan. He was there to protect him. In his own complicated way. He took a step closer and asked Ethan if he had a plan beyond running. Ethan nodded. He said he wasn't running. He was ending it. Lucas looked at me then. Not with anger. Not with blame. But with something softer. Like he understood the fear in my eyes, even if he couldn't erase it. He told Ethan that the team had already sent more people out searching, and that we had maybe 10 minutes before the entire perimeter flooded. My chest tightened. 10 minutes wasn't enough for anything. But Ethan seemed strangely calm. He told Lucas that we didn't need 10 minutes. We only needed one. He opened the car door and motioned for me to get inside. Lucas didn't stop me. He didn't stop Ethan either. Instead, he stepped aside just enough to let the car pass, but not enough to say he agreed. It was his silent way of saying this was the last time he could protect Ethan without choosing a side. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Lucas watching us in the rearview mirror, his figure growing smaller with each turn. The silent message in his eyes stayed with me. We were out. But we weren't safe. Not yet. And Ethan knew exactly who would come for us next. I didn't know fear could follow us even when the road ahead looked empty. The highway stretched in front of us, wide open and quiet, but something about the silence felt wrong. The kind of wrong that settles in your stomach long before your mind understands why. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, his jaw tight, his hands steady on the steering wheel, but I could feel the tension radiating off him like heat. He wasn't scared. He was preparing for something. That scared me more. Every few seconds he checked the rearview mirror. Not casually. Not like a driver. Like someone expecting to be chased. I asked him what he was looking for, and he just said everything. That one word didn't explain anything, but somehow it explained everything. I turned in my seat and looked out the back window. Nothing looked unusual. No headlights rushing up behind us. No strange shadows. No cars weaving through lanes. Just a quiet highway fading into the night. But something in Ethan's voice told me the danger wasn't on the road. It was in the timing. He finally spoke again, telling me that once the team realized the capsule wasn't on site, they'd track every possible escape path, and the highway was the fastest route. Which meant it was the first place they'd check. I asked him what the capsule even contained that made them this desperate. He hesitated for a moment, then told me the truth. The project wasn't just about advanced hardware or experimental tech. It was about behavior adaptation data collected from real people without consent. People who thought they were participating in harmless research. People who trusted the system. Ethan said they were building predictive emotional models capable of mapping how someone's mind would react under stress, fear, pressure, or manipulation. When I asked him why that mattered, he said quietly that whoever controlled those models could predict someone's decisions before they even made them. That's when I finally understood why the capsule was terrifying. It wasn't the documents. It wasn't the prototypes. It was the proof that the project wasn't creating technology. It was creating control. Before I could process it, Ethan suddenly told me to hold on. He took the next exit sharply, and the tires skidded for a second. The sudden turn yanked me out of my thoughts, and I looked behind us again. Still nothing. But Ethan's breathing shifted like he had seen something. When I asked what it was, he said he noticed a black SUV 2 miles back that switched lanes the same moment we did. It hadn't sped up. It hadn't slowed down. It had simply mirrored us. That kind of behavior wasn't coincidence. It was tracking. Ethan made another turn into a darker side road surrounded by fields and industrial buildings. The SUV followed. Not aggressively. Not trying to catch us. Just staying close enough to watch. Ethan's voice dropped lower as he told me we had about 60 seconds before they closed the distance. And in 60 seconds everything could change. The next morning arrived with a soft golden glow slipping past our bedroom curtains, the kind of gentle sunrise that made everything feel a little lighter, a little calmer, like the universe itself wanted to press reset on our lives. I woke up before Alex did, and for a moment, I just watched him, the same man who annoyed me, loved me, challenged me, and held me together when I fell apart. His arm rested across my waist like he was subconsciously afraid I would disappear if he let go. And honestly, after everything that happened, I didn't blame him. I slipped out of bed quietly, brushing my teeth and tying my hair up, still feeling the soft sting of guilt from the chaos my own expectations had created. I wasn't perfect. I had pushed him. I had demanded too much. But he also wasn't perfect either. He had reacted out of fear, not thought. And relationships were messy like that. No one wins alone. When I stepped back into the bedroom, Alex was awake, sitting at the edge of the bed with his hair totally messed up and eyes still sleepy. But the moment he looked at me, something warm, something peaceful passed between us. "Come here," he whispered. I walked over, and he pulled me into his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. That one embrace said everything, the apology, the forgiveness, the promise. "I'm sorry," he murmured first. "I should have been honest. I should have trusted you instead of assuming the worst." "I'm sorry too," I said, burying my face into his shoulder. "I pushed you way too hard. I made the MacBook feel like a priority when it should have been us." He pulled back slightly, cupping my face with both hands. "You're my priority. You always were. But I don't ever want to lose you over misunderstandings. Not again." My chest tightened, the good kind, the emotional kind, the kind that reminded you that love wasn't about big grand gestures, it was about small moments like this. We stayed like that for a long minute before he stood up, walked to his closet, and pulled out a sleek silver box wrapped in a matte black ribbon. My eyes widened instantly. "Wait, is that?" He smiled. "Open it." My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside sat the brand new MacBook Ultra, shining like it came straight out of a luxury commercial. My breath hitched. "Alex, why?" My voice cracked a little. Because I want to, he said simply. Not because you demanded it. Not because you pressured me. But because I know it'll make your content, your dreams, your work even better. And because I love seeing you happy. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Not because of the gift, but because of the way he said it. With sincerity. With love. With pride. I threw my arms around him, holding him tight. Thank you, not just for this, but for everything. He kissed my forehead gently. We're a team, remember? I nodded, smiling through the last tear that slid down my cheek. By afternoon, we were curled up on the couch together, my new MacBook Ultra open on my lap, Alex's head resting on my shoulder while I edited my next video. Our playlist played softly in the background, the room warm and peaceful, everything finally aligned again. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I didn't just get the MacBook I wanted. I got the relationship I needed. A relationship built on honesty, effort, growth, and a love that only got stronger through the chaos.